Here, wait, let me. That's not an earthquake. My iPad is swaying. We did have an earthquake yesterday. I figured with the time difference in London, I should give you a little California for a background.
Yeah,
It's a Zoom background. I'm really in a ground floor flat. No.
I was going to say, I mean, part of me is like, that's really nice of you, and part of me is now insanely jealous. So thank you, though. Thank you. So I'm assuming things are pretty good in California right now.
Yeah, we're returning to normal. It seems to me. So we're getting back to normal.
Oh, good news. Good news. Well, listen, thank you for being on the show, mate. I appreciate it a lot.
Hang on a second. Okay, there we go. All right, fine.
Yeah,
I'll put that over there. There we go. All good. Yes.
Oh, good. All right. So, as I was saying, 33 years since Die Hard came out, still regarded as the greatest action movie ever, often imitated, never bettered, and so far not rebooted. Does that not surprise you? There's a reason I'm asking this right now, but does it not surprise you that no one's tried to reboot Die Hard?
There has been conversation about, it's a strange conversation. There was talk at 20th Century Fox to do a prequel. And the idea was, and I remember some executives saying, we want to know what made John McClane that kind of diehard kind of guy. So we need a prequel when he was a young, and well, excuse me, what made him that kind of guy was the movie Die Hard, which established that prior to that, he was just a regular guy. So the whole prequel mentality, I don't know. There actually was an authorized comic book, which was young John McClane when he was a patrol officer. That was, I don't know, about 20 years ago. A Dark Horse or somebody did it. But the last conversation I heard was there was going to be another sequel that would partially be old Bruce Willis, and then partially with flashbacks to his youth, and somehow the two, like Godfather 2, the two ends of the story would be connected. But
Okay.
There was a Die Hard prequel. It's starring Frank Sinatra. You know that story, right?
The detective, wasn't it?
Exactly. I think it's 1968 or thereabouts.
Right.
It was written by the same author. What's his name?
Roderick Thorpe.
Roderick Thorpe wrote a book called, he wrote many novels, but he wrote a book called The Detective in the mid-'60s that was made into a motion picture with Frank Sinatra. And then about 8 or 9 years later, he wrote a sequel called Nothing Lasts Forever, which our producer, Larry Gordon, said it sounded like a chick flick. Oddly enough, at that time, Shane Black had just given a script to Joel Silver that Joel Silver had just optioned, and Joel Silver said, "Listen, I'm taking your title off. I'm going to make your movie, but I'm taking the title and putting on another movie. So come with another title for your movie." So the title the title he had for his script was called Die Hard. Joel appropriated the title and put it on Nothing Lasts Forever, and then the original script called Die Hard got renamed Last Boy Scout.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the titles got swapped around.
I mean, it sounds to me like there were some interesting people that were approached before John McTiernan jumped on board. One name that sticks out to me, Paul Verhoeven was asked to direct Die Hard. Am I right in thinking that?
That may be true. That I was when I was approached, it was already going to be McTiernan. So well, I was in the loop when all the actors turned it down. All the usual suspects. And you have to sort of put yourself, I guess, in the headspace of the actors and the actors' agents at that time in 1988, where we had all these movies with these, roided up, larger than life muscular heroes, and I was culpable in some of that. So the script goes out to actors, and they look at the script and they go that the hero spends the first 30 minutes hiding from the bad guys and trying to call the police. So they're going like, this guy's a wimp. They couldn't get past that this was an important breakthrough in the world of of making a believable hero. And it was turned down by Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Richard Gere. At one point, they went to Burt Reynolds, who had a long relationship with the producer.
Wow.
Jamie Kahn, and listen, a long list. And fortunately, it ended up going to Bruce Willis. The studio had a release date for the movie, so they were in a panic. And at that time, the $5 million fee that Bruce's agents demanded, knowing again from the grapevine that everybody in town had turned it down and the clock was ticking, the movie needed to start like in a week and a half, he got this high price, and the repercussions were enormous. Richard Dreyfuss called his agent up the next day and said, Bruce Willis gets $5 million and I don't, and I have an Oscar, you're fired. And it was the beginning of an arms race in actors' fees, and eventually went up to $20 million for some of the stars before it got scaled back by giving them back ends and points and so forth and so on. But had we not had Bruce Willis in Die Hard, I don't think you would ever had Keanu Reeves as an action star in Speed, speaking of, and so many other people, or Mark Wahlberg, or so many other people that are not 6'3". I mean, there's still room for The Rock, and there's still room for these big guys. But the universe has opened up for more normal-sized heroes, which is sort of easier to believe them as an underdog. You know, you have a problem. You know, you have a problem finding big enough guys to beat The Rock up that you worry about him. You know.
It was like, obviously he was a sitcom actor. He was in Moonlighting with Bruce Willis, and was there any pushback from audiences when you tested the movie on having a sitcom actor as an action hero, bearing in mind what had gone before?
Indeed, there was, and in fact, right before the movie came out, the kind of fans turned on Bruce because of there was some politics and feuding on the set of Moonlighting, and between that and the argument was made that leading lady was pregnant. So for like 3 or 4, I think for almost 4 or 5 episodes over a month, the stars were not in the show. And the supporting cast was on, and that irritated the audience. And then right before the movie opened, a fellow who worked for Bruce Willis, he had a boat in the marina, and a fellow who worked for Bruce Willis was I guess cleaning the boat or something, and fell off and drowned. You know, and that was, and then I think Bruce had a DUI, or there was some kind of incident. So when the trailer was in movie theaters, I'm working on the movie, right? And they said, hey, you know, the trailer's going to be in the movies this week. You know, go to a theater and see the coming attraction. So I go to the neighborhood theater, I guess it was in Century City. And when the trailer started, the audience booed Bruce. And I go, well, these are these West Side jerks, you know. But then like before the weekend was over, I heard from everybody involved in the movie that everywhere, New York, LA, everywhere, people were booing and laughing at Bruce Willis's appearance in the trailer. So the studio went into a full-blown panic, and the teaser poster that said coming, you know, this July, which was a color poster of Bruce with a gun, they pulled it down. You still can see that. You can buy that poster. That was a teaser poster. They pulled that down and discarded it. And the new poster, which was about to go out, which was Bruce's face, half a face and half the building. Yeah. They pulled that, and all the ads and the posters the week before the movie came out was just the building and no names of actors. They basically they said, let's bury who's in it and hope word of mouth will take it over the top, which is what happened. The second week, the ads and the poster was the mostly black and white poster with the building and Bruce's face. But if you go online and do a little digging, and I assume you have a web page associated with your podcast, you can definitely find that ad that ran the week before the movie came out, and it's just a building with helicopters and a cast of none.
But was he still filming Moonlighting as Die Hard was filming? Because I remember reading somewhere John McTiernan said like he was getting like 20 minutes sleep a night because he was coming straight from Moonlighting, grabbing a nap, and then coming straight onto Die Hard.
Exactly, because the picture came together so quickly, and he was cast so late, he was not extricated from his duties on the Moonlighting show, which films like a normal workday, well, a Hollywood workday, which is 7 to 7. The actors may not show up a little bit later, but the crew's in at 7. After, I guess, the 4th or 5th day of filming, and as it turned out, because to accommodate him, the first couple of weeks of filming were night shoots in the building. A lot of the movie is in a real building. The building you see is on the 20th Century lot, so it was convenient and could be, isolated, and people wouldn't be walking in and out of the set. So McTiernan came to me and said, "Listen, we're killing this guy. He's just catnapping like between takes. He's exhausted. Can you expand some of the other parts, and we'll give Bruce a couple of days off, build up some of the other parts." So the subplots involving the reporter and the first scene I wrote to accommodate this issue was the scene where Holly confronts Alan Rickman. So all of the other supporting players, their parts got richer, and the movie got more complex in a desire to give Bruce a break. And McTiernan was very kind later. He said a number of times in interviews and in this big coffee table book of Die Hard that he asked me to, expand the parts, and I gave him a Fellini movie. So I don't know if that's exactly what it is, but the film was richer for it. It just shows you how the push me, pull me vicissitudes of production can, for good or ill, alter the course of what you're doing.
And I mean, when you were on set, it sounds like it was not a film that was sort of made on the fly, but a lot was improvised on set and altered as you were filming it. I mean, both in terms of the ad libs that I know, because there's some really funny lines in Die Hard, which a lot of came from a back and forth with you and Bruce on set. I mean, one of my favorites, and I don't know if it was an ad lib or if it's in your script, but come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
Yeah, that was a line that was interesting because I was on the set a lot. Sometimes writers aren't welcome on the set, but I had done many movies starting in television with these producers, and I have been a producer and a showrunner in television before I made the transition to mostly. I mean, I'm still doing television before I started largely doing features. So, I know the etiquette of a set. And if an actor says, what's my motivation? I go, look, talk to the director. My work is done. I'm just here. There's a problem. So a film like this, there's not a lot of improvisation in an action movie. I mean, if you're not on your mark and an explosion goes off, you can get hurt. But within the limited parameters of improv, there was some. And what happened on this picture, I was on the set all day. It was one of those days where we were actually filming in the daytime, going into the night. And I come home and I roll into my house. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And there's a phone call from our producer, Joel Silver. Says, "You got to come back to the set." I go, "What is it?" He says, "We're doing this scene where Bruce is crawling through the vents. And these idiots, they used regular vents. In other words, they just got stock vents, not realizing they should have been larger than stock vents to facilitate the crawling. So it's taken him a month to crawl through these vents. So we need some more ad libs." So I went back to the set and they gave Bruce a walkie-talkie, and I was just feeding him lines, I think, just to fill the time as he's crawling along, in the tunnel. So come out to the coast. That was one of them. But Bruce ad lib. Now I know what a TV dinner feels like. That was an ad lib of his. And one of the more interesting, spontaneous things that happened from being on the set. Joel Silver has this theory that these kind of movies, action movies, are hate movies. They're like love stories, but they're hate stories. In a love story, two characters meet, have a cute meet. They have a couple of dates. They fall in love, and they get married or go off together. In a hate movie, there's a cute meet, a couple of almost moments where they kill each other, and then one kills the other. The problem we had was, given the structure of the movie and the overwhelming odds, there was sort of no way to get Bruce Willis together with Alan Rickman where Bruce wouldn't be killed. So this was bothering us all during the shoot. Is there a way we can have these guys meet, and not, before they, meet at the end of the movie? And then one day on the set, it was a break, and the equivalent of the tea lady on an American set, they come around with sandwiches, the craft service people, in the afternoon, and we're just taking a break for some sandwiches or something. And someone said to Alan Rickman, this was his first movie ever, not his first American movie, his first motion picture ever, said, "Alan, a lot of the British actors do an American accent. Do you do an American accent?" And he said, "Well, I don't know if I do an American accent per se, but I do like, a California one." So everyone everyone burst up laughing. And then I said, "Oh my gosh." And I ran off and I grabbed Joel Silver and I brought him back and I said, "Do that again, Alan. Do what you did before. Do your American accent." And he did it again. And Joel said, "I don't get why." Oh, and he got it. And then he ran and got McTiernan and Larry Gordon. And then we bring him over, and John McTiernan says, what are we doing here? And I said, he only knows Hans Gruber as a voice on the walkie-talkie, but he can change his voice. He can meet him, and he can head fake him. And McTiernan, went to AFI in the script writing program, but became a director. So he's a meticulous planner and kind of a very dour Scot. And he goes, no. Now he saw him kill Tagagi. So I said, have you shot that yet? And McTiernan turned to the first AD, and the first AD says, no, we're shooting that tomorrow. So I said, is there a way to shoot that scene that he doesn't see Alan Rickman's face? So we all walked over to the soundstage that was the conference room. It was one of the things that was set. A lot of the movie was in the real building. This was a set. And John walks around, like this. And finally he says, all right, I guess if I move that big conference table, if I turn that conference table 45 degrees, it has a giant leg. Instead of having 4 legs, it has a giant wall of leg at one end, the other. Then I could stage it. And so the stage crew starts to move, and he says, no, wait. You bring me the scene by the end of the day, and then maybe we'll turn everything upside down. So they evicted somebody from whatever was the closest office building to the soundstage. Maybe it was accounting or bookkeeping, whatever it was. They made somebody leave their office, gave me their desk. It took me 10 minutes to remember how a typewriter worked because I already transitioned the computer. Oh yeah, there's a carriage return, and we had a scene in the movie that was filming, I guess, a week later, where he actually ran into Theo, who was an American, and but Theo said something stupid, and he realized Theo was a terrorist, and he killed him. So the actor playing Theo got a life extension because he said, we're taking that out, and he's going to meet Alan Rickman, but he's not going to kill him. But there'll be a whole scene there. So that would never have happened had I not been on the set. Had not been Alan Rickman hadn't been kidding around. Now about that scene, people come to me all the time and go, how did he figure out that he was one of the terrorists? And so people go, because his accent wasn't that good, and he's such a good cop, he could tell a fake American accent. I go, no. And they go, he gave him a cigarette, but it was a Gaulois cigarette, and no American would accept the creepy French cigarette. No, it wasn't that. And then another theory is, when he gave him the gun, the weight of the gun without the bullets, except you already trusted him. And again, no, it wasn't that. What it was, and it all goes back to how movies are put together and they're shot out of order. When originally, as written and shot, when Alan Rickman and his crew got off of the truck at the very beginning of the movie, they paused for a moment, and Alan Rickman said in German, but the cognate is clear enough to English, synchronize your watches. And they all, in a circle, put their hands out, and they all synchronized their watches, and they all had the same tag your watch. Now, when Bruce kills the first terrorist, which is totally stolen, I admit, steal from the best, from Alfred Hitchcock in Torn Curtain, where they show how hard it is to kill somebody without a weapon. There's a scene where Paul Newman and another woman kill a Stasi agent, and it takes forever, right? And then for enough, they gas him, so there's a whole subtext there. He almost kills the guy by accident. The guy, he falls down the steps. So now he searches the guy, and he finds cigarettes, and he says, these are very bad for you. And he looks around, he steals the cigarettes, and the audience laughs because he's a cop, he's stealing cigarettes. And then he looks at the watch, and there's another laugh. He's going to steal the watch, but he doesn't. Anyway, as he killed each guy he kills him, he searches him, he takes his ammunition, and each guy he killed, the next 2 guys, he noticed the watch. Now, when he has the conversation with the cop outside, he says, I think these guys are pros. Their IDs are the best IDs I've ever seen. It looks like they all have the same weapons. The labels are cut out of their clothing. This is a professional crew. He also said, and they all have the same watch. And later on, the Dwayne Robinson, maybe he's a bartender, that's how he knows, which is a joke about Bruce Willis. Anyway, as we're putting the movie together, we had always said, what was the explanation of how they were going to get away? So the explanation of how they were going to get away was that they were going to escape in the chaos of the explosion. But we didn't have that dialogue in the script until the end of the movie when he had Holly at gunpoint. And we were about to shoot that, and it just seemed so phony and convenient. Like he says, if you steal $600, they forget about you. $600 million, they chase you to the ends of the earth, but not if they think we are dead. He explained how so we just said, that's so phony, and that's bad exposition. So literally at the 11th hour, like 10 days before shooting, I said, listen, I did a thing in a movie that nobody's ever seen. It's not on home video, which was a TV movie of Will Eisner's The Spirit, which later was made a theatrical picture. Now, subsequently, since Die Hard came out, Warner Brothers released this on home video, so you can see it.
This is Sam Jones Jr.'s in this, right?
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Yeah.
That was a pilot for a series, but the network was sold, and it got lost in the transition. So anyway, that, which was an over-the-top cartoon, the villain was so evil, she was going to blow up a children's hospital and escape in a fake ambulance. So I said, nobody saw that. Let's do that. Great, let's do that. Now, this was put together so hastily, right, that scene where, and it requires no dialogue, when Argyle is in the basement and he sees them pull that ambulance out of the truck, everyone in the audience understands exactly what the plan is without a word of dialogue or subtitle. You go, aha. Now, to show you how hastily that was assembled, the word ambulance is misspelled on the ambulance. and they didn't realize it until the day in the set, and they go, it's the last 2 days of filming, we can't fix it. All right, so now they cut the movie together. It's the first assembly of the movie, and the key players are looking at the movie. It's just the key players, the editor, director, producer, Bruce and Demi. They were just about to get married, I think. I was there with my wife, but maybe 15 people. We're watching the movie. It's temporary music track. Occasionally it says shot missing. There's black and white shots. It's a work in progress, but it's working. So we're into the movie. We're about 20 minutes in, and then everybody in the room goes, oh, hell no. Stop the film. Because we realize that since we didn't think of the ambulance being explained visually as opposed to dialogue until the last few days of filming, they're standing there to synchronize your watches in front of an empty truck. Because we hadn't thought of it yet. So now McTiernan says to the editors, you got to get the scissors in there. You got to cut that shot as soon as you can, get them off the truck before we can see past them. And while you're at it, color correct it and make it darker. Now I've given it away, and everyone listening to this podcast, get out their Blu-ray and DVD and freeze frame and look behind Alan Rickman and the guys as they get off. There is no ambulance. But now, without synchronize your watches, the repeated moments where Bruce Willis looks at everybody's watch, you go, what's that about? Now we had to cut the line of dialogue when he says, they all have the same weapons. Their IDs are the best fake IDs I've seen. The labels are cut out of their clothing, and they all have the same watch. All the same watch is taken out. All of the moments where he looked at each watch is taken out, except the first one, which plays as a gag. Is he thinking of stealing the watch along with the cigarettes? Yeah. So when he went to light the cigarette for Hans Gruber, he saw Hans Gruber's watch. And in the first cut of the film, in that close-up of cigarette lighting, you saw Bruce's eyes go to the watch. And if you were in the audience and with a little rack focus change, right, directing your eye to the focus to the watch and then back to Bruce's eyes, everybody understands the thinking process of the actor. But we had to take that out, which has now led to everybody coming up with these cockamamie explanations. Of course, the only one that holds water is, oh, he's such a good cop, he can tell when someone's lying, which is not the same thing. You know, like Sherlock Holmes, you want to think his way through things, not like guess.
One of the lines that I read, because I read your script to it, it didn't make it into the movie, and I love the line that's in the movie. It's when McClane meets Ellis for the first time, and I think your original line was he sees that he's been doing cocaine, and he says something like, I think Takagi says Ellis is in charge of international acquisitions, and then McClane says something like, well, that explains his recent deal with Bolivia.
Yes. Instead, on the set, for whatever reason, it was changed to on the fly to you missed some. He missed some to him, which is maybe more appropriate for a cop, not trying to make a scene.
And am I right in thinking this might not be right, but it's one of the lines that you're not a fan of in this film. Paul Gleason's line.
I know what it is. I know what you're going to say.
All right.
We're gonna need some more FBI guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a Paul Gleason ad lib, and I thought it was just a bit too far. This movie, by the way, had the two go-to assholes of 80s movies for the first time on screen together. You had Paul Gleason, who always was the go-to guy, like the Breakfast Club in this movie, and the guy who played the reporter, who plays he's also in Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
He's the guy from the EPA. Never before had so much assholery been captured on screen in one film.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I was too young to interview anyone for Die Hard. I did interview Bruce Willis for Die Hard 5, which is interesting because to me that's not really a Die Hard movie. It no longer feels like a Die Hard movie by the time you've got to that point in the franchise.
No, it's a generic action movie. In my humble opinion, only the first two movies are Die Hard movies. If you wanted to find a Die Hard movie, in my opinion, but actually objectively, it has a Unitarian, it has an Aristotelian unification of time and place and location, which is like classic Aristotle.
Mm-hmm.
It takes place in a compressed time period in one location, and the hero is trapped between the opposing forces of law and order and crime, and they all hate him, and they all want to get rid of him. He's sandwiched between them, and he's all alone, and he has no official help. He's some people come to his aid, but he's improvising all the way. So by the time we get to the third movie, he is no longer all alone. The authorities are helping him. He's no longer trapped in one place. He's going all over Manhattan. And the end of the movie, he goes to Canada. After that next movie, he's all over the East Coast. And the last picture is all over the world. The first two movies, he's a technophobe. He can't operate a fax machine. He's scared to fly. In the later movies, he's flying. He's like flying helicopters. He's jumping off of buildings without blinking. In the first movie, he says, oh God, I don't want to die up here. They became generic action movies. What's really odd to me, this is the craziest thing, is the first movie was based on a novel, which was a sequel to another novel. The second movie, Die Harder, was based on another novel by a different guy that had nothing to do with the other novel. We changed the hero of that novel to be the character that was in Die Hard. The third movie was a spec script, had nothing to do with Die Hard, called Simon Says. But the crazy thing about Simon Says is that about 7 years prior to that, I wrote an article for Premiere Magazine that was a goof article. It was about a movie that was wildly out of control with a budget. And it was a crossover of Die Hard and Beverly Hills Cop. And the article was written as if the movie had just been produced. So a lot of people thought it was real, right? And there was pages from the script, memos from the studio. We're out of control with the budget. We've got to get the budget down. So I showed how with a pencil you can get the picture on schedule. But the plot of the fake movie is the plot of Die Hard 3 of Simon Says. So I always wondered if the guy who wrote the spec script that became Die Hard 3 saw that article and said, this is a great idea. I'll have Bruce Willis's character hook up with Eddie Murphy to stop a mad bomber. And we can't get Eddie Murphy, so we'll get Samuel Jackson.
Wow. I mean, like, people do still love Die Hard 3, though. I think.
No, it's a great picture. It's a wonderful movie. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying to me it does not check the boxes of what a Die Hard movie is. Whereas actually, Speed does.
Yes, yeah, it does.
If you want to say what are the elements, the pattern, Air Force One, there's a whole pattern. Again, compressed time, compressed space, limited resources. You're on your own. There are a number of Die Hard wannabes it got to such a degree it became a genre. Die Hard on a boat, Die Hard, in a plane, Die Hard at the White House.
It's Die Hard in a football stadium recently with Dave Bautista. Final score, yeah.
Well, the one that amuses me, where there was one called Sudden Death with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which was Die Hard at a hockey arena.
Yeah.
And by dumb luck, I think it was a Sony picture. I'm not sure. By dumb luck, I was having a meeting at Sony the Monday after the movie opened. And I walked past an open conference room where the producer of that movie was on the phone. And he was just dismayed that the movie had not done better at the box office over that weekend. He said, I don't believe we didn't do better. We had more hostages in that movie than any Die Hard movie. So therefore it should have done the most business,
I mean, listen, you mentioned Jean-Claude Van Damme, and obviously Die Hard got praise immediately after its release. It's only now, seemingly, that Street Fighter, your film, is getting the love that it so readily deserves. And I say that I have so much love for Street Fighter. And it fascinates me. Like, you wrote the pitch for Street Fighter in one night.
Well, I would say probably I had 48 hours notice, but yeah.
48 hours notice. Now, I mean, working on that movie, like, I remember a lot of jokes at the time about Jean-Claude being cast as all-American hero Guile in the film. But I'm right in thinking Capcom, the game maker, wanted him all along for this film.
Well, no, actually, they wanted a big action star. So originally they said, can you get Stallone? Can you get Schwarzenegger? And we just said, you can't afford them. They had a budget of $30 million. We ended up going a little bit over. You couldn't afford those guys. So by process of elimination, they finally said, what about Jean-Claude Van Damme? So I said, well, because to a degree this is an ensemble piece, I think we could work that out because we don't need him for 10 weeks. We need him for half that time. But there's a problem with his accent, and they're playing one of the American characters in the video game. And they go, what accent? Because they're watching his movies all dubbed into Japanese. So I ended up doing what has been done on a lot of his movies, mentioning he's from Louisiana. But as you tighten the movie up and make it go faster and faster and faster, somehow the line of dialogue about him from being Louisiana fell out of the movie. So you just accept it. Well, Americans come in all flavors. But the one thing that I kept warning them, I said, his audience is going to expect an R-rated movie. And you want a PG-13 movie, there's going to be a disconnect there. But they wanted a PG-13 movie because they were very well aware how much of their fan base, dropping the quarters in the machine, were really young kids. And so ideally the sweet spot for them was PG-13 because teenagers would go and their younger brothers and sisters would go. Whereas if it was a G-rated movie, the little kids would go, I don't want to see a G-rated movie. And the older siblings would not go either. So that was the sweet spot, PG-13. You don't want R because you cannot advertise toys on American broadcast television or hamburger meals for an R-rated movie. It's baked into the advertising system. So as predicted, a lot of people were disappointed in the level of the action and violence because it was toned down. It was toned down even more than intended. Now, I had worked in, movies and in television. I worked in 8 o'clock television, which is family hour. And there's really hard and fast rules there. There's this presumption in broadcast television that all the children are in bed at exactly 8:30. So if you today watch a rerun of an American television show from the 80s, like The A-Team or Knight Rider, and you're just watching it in a rerun, and all of a sudden you get to a scene where somebody says, yeah, boss, I blew off that guy, Michael Knight. He doesn't suspect a thing. Only you and I know about the counterfeit money. And boss, what are you doing? Put away the gun. Bang. You go, 8:31. Now, of course, there's 4 time zones in America. The whole idea was ridiculous. But I know how to do a PG-13 movie. So that's what I wrote. That's what I shot. But right before the movie came out, there was a minor school shooting. Not one of the big ones. In fact, nobody got hurt. But it was enough to trigger the movie, this movie is not yet rated, a movie about the rating systems,
Yeah.
about this anonymous committee, like a
Yeah,
housewife and a priest and a social worker. They looked at the picture and they rated it R. Even though I had shot, I was in the parameters. So we had to recut the movie, and they made us recut the movie again. It's rated R. And now the studio's getting really nervous. They've got the toys rolling off the trucks in the warehouse. They've got the hamburger deals. So I recut the movie one more time, taking out any blood, taking out the sound effect of too many punches, doing cheats like somebody pulls their fist back, and we don't see the fist hit. We see the other person fall to the ground with an off-stage thump, the kind of stuff you do Saturday morning cartoons, which I have done. So it's really getting watered down, the whole movie. They give us a G rating, G, and now the studio's in another panic. Oh my God, nobody, no self-respecting teenager will see a G rating movie. What are we going to do? I said, don't worry about it. So I had Jean-Claude Van Damme come back into the editing room. We plugged in the microphone, and there's a scene where he's rappelling down a rope to sneak into the villain's headquarters, and he says something, I'm getting too old for this shit. So now we send the movie in, the finished movie. We don't say anything and go, hey, what are you guys trying to pull? You changed the soundtrack since we gave you that G rating. Well, you're not getting away with this. You're getting a PG-13. We go, oh no, we got a PG-13 rating. Oh, it's so horrible.
It's sort of well documented that your leading man on that movie, Jean-Claude, wasn't as reliable as you may have hoped with you obviously directing this feature.
I never said a word about that until he did an interview with Playboy, and he said it, and then I said, okay, yes, I can confirm that was an issue.
Yeah. Like
the studio hired a handler to watch him and keep him on a short leash, but the handler ended up becoming an enabler.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And yet, he's got some really great moments there. The big speech he gives to his troops, the scene where Simon Callow is in the background, like looking furious.
Yes.
Which I think that's a great speech in that moment. He turns away and he's got tears in his eyes, and you're like, Jean-Claude, I believe in this.
He was really, again. There's a wonderful clip. See, my iPad keeps shaking. It's not an earthquake. There's a wonderful clip. Somebody took that clip and subtitled it like phonetically. So troopers, I'm going to hit him so hard. It's subtitled with his accents. It's quite amusing. But when I said we're going to have that speech, I remember one of the executives at Universal, Tom, I can't think of his name now, but anyway, he said, you're going to have Jean-Claude Van Damme do the St. Crispin's Day speech. And I go, yeah. He says, good luck with that. But actually, Jean-Claude's dad was visiting the set that day. And in fact, we gave him a bit part. At the beginning of the movie, there's a montage of newscasters all around the world reporting on this, sort of Iraqi kind of Saddam Hussein kind of situation. And his dad was a newscaster in French. They're Belgian. So the father said, right before we went on, the father says, this is interesting. This is the same day that Hitler invaded Belgium. I remember it. He says, I remember it. We all remember it. I go, oh, really? So tell your son that. And he said, this speech about stopping this dictator, this is the anniversary of the day that Hitler invaded our country, and half your family had to go into hiding and living in fear. And that was in Jean-Claude's mind as he gave that speech. So he really was emotionally involved in that. And I think he really showed some chops there. Also, he showed his ability to do comedy, and subsequently he's shown that he had an American comedy, Jean-Claude Van Johnson. But he's very funny in a number. There's a wonderful scene where he's completely outnumbered, and he figures the hell with it. My battery is getting low.
Oh no!
I have 10% battery there. I can switch to my phone though. We can pick up. There's where he realizes he's completely outnumbered. A whole bunch of enemy soldiers come out, and he just takes out a pocket knife And they all back away. And he gets really impressed. He doesn't realize his army has just arrived behind him. The thing that gets me now is the reviews at that time that said this movie is so stupid, it's accidentally funny. Now, I don't know how anybody could look at that movie and not realize it's intended to be a comedy.
Yeah.
It's an action comedy.
You've got Zangief's line where he's like, quick, change the channel.
Yeah. You got paid?
yeah. I also like Bison's line when he's standing over the model of Bisonopolis and he's going, no. The food court should be bigger.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, what's happened now is on the anniversary of the film, which I guess was 2 years ago, it was the 25th anniversary of the film. There were all these revisionist articles saying, hey, actually, this movie is a lot of fun. It's pretty good. And one thing I noticed, and it may account for its increasing popularity and acceptance now, is I was at a film festival I was a guest at a film festival in Madrid, and I also was in a screening here. They're both the 25th anniversary, and all these people came up to me to autograph their Blu-rays and their DVDs, and they're all people in their mid to late 30s, and basically this was the first action movie their parents let them see, basically, and this is why they love it. They were finally allowed to see a movie with explosions and killing, and that's why it's a childhood favorite. Yeah. It was like a benchmark of their transition to watching, more sophisticated films.
And I mean this absolutely sincerely. Like, I think it's one of Raul Julia's greatest performances, and as M. Bison, and considering how ill he was at the time,
yes.
It's just incredible. I think he studied Mussolini.
Yes. He was looking at clips of Mussolini and Saddam Hussein, and he totally committed to it. Well, when the script came across his threshold, his kids saw it and go, Street Fighter, Dad, you got to do that. So. But he had a great time. Yeah, he had a great time with his family. He brought his kids down there to Australia. They were living there for several months. They had a condo on the beach. They swam with the porpoise. He probably had the best time with his family on any picture he ever did, and that was great.
That is great. And you obviously had to accommodate, because he arrived quite gaunt, didn't he? He was quite thin at the start, and you had to move the schedule around a little bit.
Yes, in fact, the costume designer for his costume, she had gone on. She was on an earlier flight, and she was in Australia. We were coming from Thailand, where we've been location scouting, and she came directly from the States. So she arrived the night before, and our flight landed. I don't remember the geography. Our flight landed. We wherever we landed, we had to then travel to the studio. So she got me in the airport lounge and said, we have a real problem here with Raul. You'll see he's lost a tremendous amount of weight. Marilyn Vance, this is our costume designer, Academy Award-winning costume designer. She did just the Raul Julia costume for us. And we were told that he had contracted some kind of intestinal parasite when he had just done a picture in Brazil, which was ultimately a picture that was released posthumously about a priest who was fighting for the indigenous people. This turned out to be a lie that was spun by his people. He had been operated on for stomach cancer. So what I did, I said, all right, let's push all of his work to the back of the movie and put him on milkshakes and fatten him up and send him to the gym. And I was unable to move one day of his work. There's a limited, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. And the day of his work I was unable to push back, was where he comes into the laboratory and says, Dr. Dalsine, how is your work coming today? Where we see he's forcing him to do experiments. So as much as we could with makeup and lighting, we tried to describe how gaunt he was there. You can see it there. But later on, he put on some weight, and he looks, it looks robust enough to carry the weight of the movie. That had other ramifications, though, because when we started the picture, the debate was, are we going to hire martial artists who we hope can act, or are we going to hire actors to teach martial arts? And the decision was made that since the signature moves of the game were really so oddball and had so little connection to actual Krav Maga or karate, you know what I mean? It's there is no, that's not what they teach you in hand-to-hand combat. in SAS. It's a video game. We said, let's get actors and we'll teach them how to be safe in stunts over the zone. So the idea was that we would shoot all of the fights at the end of the movie and all of the dialogue scenes up front. And we're going to make a movie for 10 weeks. That gives weeks and weeks of time when anybody who's not on camera is in the gym being taught, trained, being built up, being taught how to safely fall and do these like action adventure moves. But because of this last minute shuffle of pushing all Raul's work back, this plan went awry. And we were doing action scenes almost from day one with hardly any rehearsal for the actors. So they were getting only a fraction of the training in these wacky martial arts moves that they were supposed to have gotten. And as a result, when we wrapped the movie, we saw that a lot of the fight scenes were weak, and we ended up going up to Vancouver for about 8 days and augmenting the fights, duplicating some of the sets and augmenting some of the fights. So the big fight between Jean-Claude and Raul, that was we got that the first time in Australia because that was the end of the shoot, and they had both been very well rehearsed by then. But a lot of the other characters, we had to like redo some of their work in Vancouver just to amp it up, and then we had to cut it back to satisfy the ratings people.
I mean, that ratings controversy that you had, the problems that you had on Street Fighter. Another film that you were involved with also had some rating issues. It's a film based on a comic that I absolutely loved as a kid, 2000 AD, because you wrote Judge Dredd.
Yes, I did the production rewrite of Judge Dredd. I share credit with Waylon Green, excellent writer. But I was brought in because the producers knew me, and same thing. We want to add some humor. We want to have some plot twists and things like that. And I had developed a couple of movies with Sly that never got filmed. One was very famous called Isobar. It was kind of like Snowpiercer. So I got along with Sly. So there were a lot of reasons to bring me in. And I knew the comic book very well. In fact, about 10 years prior, I tried to get the same producer, Ed Pressman, interested in the comic book. Nobody in America knew the comic book prior. And even at the time we made the movie, the comic book had just been brought out in an American edition in the hopes it would familiarize Americans with the thing. So what I noticed right away is there were a lot of odd things that were not canon to 2000 AD. Anyway, I would notice things in the movie that were not canon. And then, speaking of canon, Danny Cannon would he was always saying that he had convinced everybody in the movie that everything in the thing, he would say, the fans will revolt if you don't do this. And I would go, hey, that's not in the comic book. And he would get really annoyed when I would, look, creative discussions are fine. He's a very talented guy. The show Pennyworth is fabulous. You've been watching it. So he wanted a very dark, gritty vision. And I've done dark, gritty. I've done, Ricochet. I've done some pretty dark, gritty movies. But I wanted there was supposed to be some comedy relief in this movie. So he would be increasingly annoyed whenever I would totally innocently say, that's not in the comic. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just going, listen. And so and the people in the room would realize he'd been telling them for months like something was in the comic when it wasn't. So his frustration with me couldn't be made more clearly by the fact that in the scene where Sly stops a drunk driver in a flying car, which I wrote, but now he says, "Well, Mr. Souza, this is your third violation." So that was like that was his payback to me by making the asshole in the movie me. But the ratings thing, was crazy. This was going to be again a PG-13 movie with the hamburger deal and a toy deal. Now, again, I've been around the block. I know how to write a PG-13 movie. So for one example, there's a scene in the movie where there's a reporter who is getting wind of the conspiracy that's going on with Armand DeSanti and Jürgen Prochnow. And he goes on the air. He doesn't know the details, but he says, I'll have a full report tomorrow. So there's a scene where he goes home to his apartment. And in the picture, we cast like, an elderly, newscaster, like a respected senior newscaster, and he's at home with his wife. And I write in the script that this is the future, but these people have been in this apartment 60 years. It looks like your grandmother's apartment. There's like framed pictures of children. There's like, she's knitting. It does not look like the future. It's like totally gemütlich. So the wife says to him, you're walking a tightrope. Yes, don't worry. It'll be fine. Judge Dredd's like going to solve the whole problem. I trust Judge Dredd. And the door opens, and it's Armand DeSanti in Judge Dredd's costume, and then he shoots. And I type, cut to the window of the apartment, and you see the curtains are closed. You see flashes of light, and you hear machine gun fire. Mm-hmm. That's what I typed. So I get a phone call from Andy Vanya, who's one of the producers of the movie. She says, "Hey, we've assembled some of the first dailies. Why don't you come over and see them?" So I jump on my bicycle. By the way, it used to be Can't Ask Me Macho in my line of work, but now it's Can't Ask Me Verde. You always win if you come in with bicycle clips on your trousers. You come to a meeting, like you win. So I go in, and he shows me the scene. I'm watching the scene, but then when Armand Assante kicks the door open, the camera does not cut to the window. The camera stays in the room, and this elderly couple are machine gunned like Bonnie and Clyde and Bonnie and Clyde. And their bodies are twitching, and they're all over the room, and the grandchildren's pictures are shattered, and the whole room is destroyed, and their bodies are twitching. And I go, oh my God, Andy, we are so screwed. You just lost your PG-13 rating. And he says, no, I didn't. I said, what are you talking about? He pushes the button. He says, run it again. Again, once was enough. No, pay attention this time, Stephen. So I'm watching it again. I go, what was I supposed to see? He says, there was no blood. They were dry squibs. You just saw black bullet holes on the people, hundreds of black bullet holes, but no blood. That's PG. And I said, who told you that? He said, Danny Cannon. I go, well, I got to tell you, I've been doing this for 30 years, and there ain't no such rule. Oh, you must be mistaken. Maybe you're not. Like, fine. Okay, now another scene that I wrote, was at one point, Jürgen Prochnow realizes he's gotten in bed with the lunatic, that he was well-intentioned. For whatever reason, it's out of control. And he says, Rico, this has gone too far. I'm calling it off. And he starts to leave the room. And Armand Assante says, robot, kill Jürgen Prochnow. Rip his arms and legs off, but save his head for last. I want to hear him scream. And I type that the robot backs Jürgen Prochnow off camera. The camera does not pan. I'm typing this. All we see are shadows. We see Armand Assante watching with great amusement, Joan Chen, disturbed but fascinated, and we hear horrible screaming and gruesome sound effects. Right. Danny has a tremendously talented crew of puppeteers who made the robot.
Yeah.
Right? And he says, listen, while you're in your robot shop, make me a robotic Jürgen Prochnow. So they made a life-size Jürgen Prochnow puppet with removable arms, legs, and head that squirted arterial blood. And they filmed that.
Wow.
So the movie's turned in for the rating, and it's rated X. Because of all these excesses. And these are the most extreme excesses, but at every opportunity there was in the movie to show blood or gore or gruesome, even the clones. The clones that come out of the vat were like oozing and pustulating, with like pustulating, oozing, and bladders all over them. We had to cut back every shot of even the clones emerging from the tanks. They were so gross. So we're rated X. We recut the movie. It's rated X again, and now the studio is in a panic because remember I said you can't advertise toys for an R-rated movie. You can't even advertise an X-rated movie during daytime hours when children are watching. You can't have a hamburger deal. At this moment, when the movie's being rated, the toys are being stamped out at the factory. They're shipping the cardboard boxes for the Happy Meal. So now we recut the picture drastically. All these things are cut to the minimum. The picture's getting shorter and shorter by like 5-7 minutes. It's all like the gruesome stuff being cut out. We turn the picture in the third time. You're only allowed to get 3 bites at the apple. It's rated X. It's a death knell. What are we going to do? Somehow, some way, it was Jack Valenti's last few weeks as the head of the MPAA. Somehow Ed Pressman went on bended knee. They gave us one more shot, and they rated us R. So at least it wasn't X. Now, the toy company sues the studio. Sues Synergy, which is the production company, and Hollywood Pictures, which is the division of Disney that did non-cartoon movies. The hamburger people, I think it was Burger King, they sue. And they get settled out of court. They took a bath. And now we see, what is the advertising campaign for this movie? You have an R-rated movie. It's based on a comic book. And in desperation, I don't know why, what they were thinking, they go, oh, let's do a comic book-oriented campaign. Now, already you have an R-rated movie of a comic book that nobody in America is familiar with. Whoever's in charge of the advertising campaign, the distinction between comic books and graphic novels and newspaper comic strips is lost on the advertising agency. So the advertising campaign is black and white newspaper strips, with 4 or 5 panels.
Yeah.
Like Peanuts or like Dennis the Menace, right?
Yeah.
Black and white, right? That's the advertising campaign with dialogue balloons. And it was very similar to the campaign for The Phantom, which is about the same time, like Stop Evil. So there's cartoons of cartoon drawings, very cartoony, not even as realistic as a Marvel comic, which are quite commercial art now, or 2000 AD, which is like the graphic design of that. Not that level. I'm talking about, like Sunday strips. Stop thief, I am the law, right? This is the last straw for you, mean machine. So they're featuring characters that nobody knows in America on the sides of so it's a juvenile campaign for an R-rated movie. Now, the payoff of the story is several years later, Stephen Cannell, since deceased, a wonderful, talented guy, who was the king of television in American television in the 90s. He was a neighbor of mine at Universal Studios, and I was producing Knight Rider. So I knew him personally. He calls me up out of the blue and says, I have interest at Walt Disney to make a motion picture out of my TV series, Greatest American Hero. You've been doing all these superhero science fiction movies. You know the show. Do you have a take that could take this TV show to the feature level? So I see him a couple of days, and I pitch my take on how to make the movie version of the TV show, which had a lot of changes in it. We're working on a movie, a bigger scale, bigger budget. Times have changed. He loves it. We go into Walt Disney Studios. We pitch it to the development executives. One of the 3 times in a career of over 30 years where the people in the room applaud the pitch.
Wow.
Applaud the pitch. I'm getting hands slapped on the back, shaking hands. We leave the building. Cannell hugs me outside the elevator. Man, you brought it home. I get in the car. I'm driving home. I'm in a lot of traffic. Takes me I'm just pulling into my driveway. My phone rings. It's Steve Cannell. He says, I don't know what the hell happened. They were so excited. They went right upstairs, and upper manager said, Steve de Souza, that son of a bitch, he gave us an X-rated movie, R-rated movie. We got sued by the hamburgers. We got sued by the toy people. He will never work on a Disney or lot or ABC ever again. And I'm going, it wasn't me. It was the director.
Wow.
As it turned out, there were short institutional memories. People go to other jobs. I actually have worked for ABC and Disney since then. So all is forgiven.
Huh. Hey, I don't want to run down all your devices, and we have been talking for a while, but I do want to talk to you about one other movie, just because I love it, and you mentioned it earlier when you were talking about how you were responsible for some of the bare-chested muscle men destroying everything. Now, Commando is, to my mind, one of the great 80s movies. It's a movie that, for me, really set out the Arnie that I know now and sort of knew for almost 2 decades.
Absolutely. I find it very interesting, and it's really not a testament to me. It's a testament to the core, the core persona of these actors as they're trying to find their way in their career. The actors that are more personalities than chameleons, you know what I mean? Like with Humphrey Bogart, you get Humphrey Bogart. Once in a while, he stretches when he's Fred C. Dobbs in Sierra Madre. But what I learned, one of my first mentors and bosses when I was working in television was Don Mankiewicz, the son of Mankiewicz of the famous Citizen Kane movie. And he said, try and meet your actors, try and listen to their speech patterns, and try and tailor dialogue to them the way a tailor would fit a suit, a custom suit. You know, so I learned that early on when I was working in television. So what happened with 48 Hours, my first Hollywood studio picture, was I met the actors. So Nick Nolte came in to meet me, and he comes in looking a lot like he did when he got arrested. He's out of shape. His hair is long, and he says, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to lose the gut and get in shape." Eddie Murphy was so naive coming off Saturday Night Live. He wore a suit and tie to meet the writer. You know,
Wow!
And there's like you to meet your girlfriend's father. Not even a cool suit, like a go to church suit. You know, so I said to the studio, don't send Nick to the gym. I'm going to write to this slobby guy. Let Eddie be sharp, and there'll be a running gag. They think he's the cop. So anyway, what happened with Commando was Barry Diller became the head of Fox, and his first day in that new position, he goes to Larry Gordon, who did a lot of action movies, and said, I met Schwarzenegger at a cocktail party, and he's a really charming, funny guy, nothing like the role he has played in Conan or in The Terminator. If you can make a movie with him for $10 million, I will immediately greenlight it, because we've got to get some movies in the pipeline. So Larry says this to me and to Joel Silver, and we had all worked together on previous movies, television, and stuff like that. So we had a core group, and they said, and they went and they sent somebody to like to the storage room, and they got a half a dozen scripts that had been bought by the studio in the past and never made, that were sort of action-y. And they said, is there something here that could be quickly reworked to be a movie we could do right away rather than start from scratch? So everybody agreed that the script Commando had the best possibility of being greatly revised, but nonetheless a starting point for Schwarzenegger, in that it was a trained military guy whose wife and daughter were kidnapped. Now, the immediate problem was the wife and daughter are both kidnapped. They're not kidnapped till page 40. And the character is an Israeli now living in America, a former Mossad agent. So already that's a stretch for Arnold. All right, so everybody agrees on Monday morning, this is the one. And they say, great, you're going to see Arnold at 2 o'clock. And they go, whoa, wait, hey, hold it. I just started. You'll have it by then. Steve just tapped it. Now, again, I'd worked in television for these guys, and they know you're coming up with stories real quickly and real fast. You'll be fine. So I'm driving across town with Joel Silver from 20th Century Fox to Arnold's office, about a 35-minute drive, sort of brainstorming. So I'm telling Arnold the story. We can't give him the script to read. He's at the first page, Israeli. You know, and the guys who wrote the script, either they weren't in California very long, but at the point in the story where the character realized he has to rescue his wife and daughter, he does the same thing that Reese does in Terminator. He goes to the supermarket and buys products to improvise weapons. I'm going, this is California. You can just go to an Army Navy store and get all the guns he wants, you know. So I act out the story as I am going to revise it for Arnold. And at one point, I say, and then you say, remember, Sully, when I said everything to you last, I lied. And suddenly Arnold, like I said, I realize I slipped into my cocktail party Arnold impression. So I quickly go, I do all the greats, Arnold. Let me do Cary Grant for you. He says, that's all right. Just keep going. So at the end of the session, he says, "I like this part. I'm not a robot from the future, a caveman from the past. I'm wearing clothes. I'm having a family. It's a part John Wayne could play. I do this picture." And what we realized then, that Arnold and his agents were desperate to get work. He had been so pigeonholed as this freak of nature, he was being rejected for everything he was going after. Because people are saying, "You can't believe him in this part. He's like an undercover cop. Like, you see him 10 miles, like all of the kind of." So he desperately needed this movie. So he signed to do the movie. And now as we go to put the picture together, right before we start, Larry Gordon was made head of physical production. Not a producer on the lot, but head of physical production under Barry Diller and under, stockholding publicly held companies. You can't double dip. You can't be like on the board of directors and also have a job. So he said, "I can't produce this movie." Joel, who had been an associate producer up to that time, he said, "Joel, this is your lucky day. You're going to produce this movie. Your first sole producing credit." And Joel said, "Great, let's discuss my back end profits." And Larry said, "That's very amusing." Ha ha ha. And then Arnold's people, they wanted to negotiate a back end of profits. And they said, "Hey, we're taking a risk with your guy. He has never been in a movie playing a normal human being before, right? So we are not giving you this big piece of the back end." So this movie had no gross players. So there actually was a net. So I've done, John Milius and I have a running argument of who has had more movies made. So we're tied at, I think, 24 movies, but we're both cheating because we're counting a TV project. In any event, out of those 24 movies I've had made, only 2 are shown as going into profit. One was Commando, because the movie was so cheap, it only cost barely $11 million. And it made so much money you couldn't hide the profits. And the other was, strangely enough, The Flintstones, which had 300-pound gorillas on it, like Spielberg and John Goodman, but was a very cheap movie because it was entirely on the back lot. Everybody had one piece of wardrobe. Nobody even changed clothes. It never went into overtime because it was on the lot. So the movie only cost like $42 million, which was like nothing then. And at one point, it was the highest grossing comedy of all time. So all the other movies are still like, I go, how come you're still making these Die Hard movies when the profit statements for 1 and 2 show it's still in the red? The way that works is the studio borrows the money to make the movie, and then they pay it off with interest, so they never catch up. It's like a student loan.
Yeah.
This is not to be confused with residuals, which actors and creatives get. Like, if you get a DVD, the actors and the directors and the writers get a share of that DVD purchase. So I'm not complaining. Right now, I probably made 85 cents. Somebody's watching a Knight Rider rerun in Poland. But the profit statements is a different thing. And again, today, at that time, Arnold and Sly were in this competition. And Arnold said, he quite accurately said, 20 years from now, my movie is going to be the one people are still talking about it because it has a sense of humor about what it is.
Yeah.
And he was totally right.
Yeah. And although, even though, you did run out of money, didn't you, on Commando in terms of the budget? Because the ending was going to be a much grander affair than it ended up being.
Yeah, that really bothers me because you can see, if you pay attention to the movie, you can sort of figure out what happened in there. What I originally wrote, and again, people are confusing the script, but in the script, we are saying that the dictator in exile is living on one of the islands off of the California coast. There's a number of islands off the California coast. Santa Catalina is the best known. It's like a county, and there's a town there, and people live there. Santa Cruz Island was a military base that the U.S. Navy used for training, and they would have amphibious landings on that island, and they would have artillery targets for the Navy to shell. And my idea was, and written in the script was, and when it all turns to crap for the villain, the Bennett grabs a little girl, jumps in a speedboat to escape. Arnold jumps in another speedboat and follows. He shoots at this fleeing speedboat and hits a fuel line. Running out of fuel, Bennett looks around. He sees a beach, and he drives onto the beach. Arnold follows to the beach. but they are not aware that this is Santa Cruz Island, which is what the U.S. Navy uses for target practice. Now, earlier in the movie, when they're flying to the island, there's an interruption, and they say, "Attention, unidentified aircraft. You're approaching the U.S. Navy artillery range, Santa Cruz Island. It is a no-fly area." And the guy on the other end of that call is a very well-known actor from Aliens, right?
Oh, Bill Paxton.
Yeah, that's one of his first parts. That is a setup for the audience to realize, oh no, they're on that island. So the final knife fight was going to be like Private Ryan. These two guys having a knife fight on Normandy Beach with the barbed wire and the concrete blocks with explosions all around them. Now, I'm up in Vancouver on a location scout for The Running Man, another Arnold movie, which ended up not shooting in Vancouver, as it turned out. But I'm up there, and I get a phone call from Joel Silver, and he says, "Listen, I need you to dictate a new scene for the end of the movie." I go, "What are you talking about? That scene on the beach, the knife fight? We couldn't do it on the beach." I said, "What do you mean you couldn't do it on the beach?" He says, "I'll explain later, but we're filming it in a basement." In a basement? He says, "It's a long story. It's now in a basement. So rewrite it for a basement." Is it a set? He says, "No, it's a real basement. Stand by. We're gonna email pictures of the basement to you." So they send somebody in the basement, and they email me pictures, and then they put somebody on a telephone, an assistant walking around the basement saying, "Okay, that picture of the stairwell, that's at one end. The other end is a boiler, and there's a balcony." She's describing the basement to me. So now in Vancouver, in my hotel room, I'm rewriting the fight with the same dialogue, right?
Yeah.
But to accommodate, and I'm making up different ways to kill him. Like, watch that first step. Like, I killed Bennett 5 ways. Watch that first step. Let off some steam. They ended up using 2 of them, the electricity and the let off some steam.
Yeah.
Now, it turned out the reason that they ran out of money was while we were in production, our director saw a sneak preview of Rambo. And he comes back from the sneak preview of Rambo and says, "They're killing 1,000 guys in Rambo. We have to kill more guys." Now, I had written in the script a rather plausible cadre of professional mercenaries who were guarding this dictator in exile. And in the opening scene, you saw about 7 or 8 of them. And it was an ethnically mixed group of like mooks, with mercenaries of all nations. And we also saw them again when they had a little girl in a chair with a gag around her set, right? Yeah. And just like Beverly Hills Cop, you figure somebody like this is a dozen guys on this payroll. That's what I wrote. It's sort of plausible. Unbeknownst to me, in order to have like a bigger body count, he decides to have somehow on a private island here, he has an entire army that he has transplanted from Central America. So now we have this kind of like basically blatantly racist trope of mowing down like hundreds of brown people instead of like a dozen, bodyguards of all ethnicities. And he ends up spending 4 or 5 days on this thing. Now, there was a gunfight at the house that was written, and I did write the scene in the garden shed, with the frisbee cutting off the head, and the machete joke. But this like mass extermination I was as shocked when I saw it as anybody else. And the money that went into that robbed the scene that was supposed to be the end of the movie. But what's really odd is you have that whole setup. You're approaching San Catalina, or the Santa Cruz, it's set up, but it's not paid off.
Yeah. Steve, we've been talking for a while, and you've already lost the battery on one device. It's been an absolute pleasure. Only because you mentioned it earlier. I really love the sound of Isobar. I read all about it. Alien on a train. Like, it sounds like a movie I kind of wish had actually seen the light of day.
There's a book called The Greatest Science Fiction Movies Never Made by one of the editors of Empire Magazine. I'm trying to think of Nick. I can't think of his name. This is embarrassing. I got the book here somewhere on my desk, in which he goes into great detail about the plot of the movie. And the movie was canceled like 2 weeks before start. It would have been a very good movie. It started out as Alien on a Train, but it became more complicated, more sophisticated. It was kind of like really Grand Hotel meets Titanic.
Wow.
And it was very ambitious. And we were talking about, they'd cast, Stallone was cast, and what's her name? A beautiful actress. I can't think of her name, but we had, a lot of the parts were cast and had to be paid off, because they had, committed their time to be in the movie, and then it was canceled. Kim Basinger was the leading lady, and Jim Belushi was cast on a part in the picture. Jim Belushi was in the part of the crude rich millionaire who you meet in Grand Hotel, the Wallace Beery part. And we were going to have a senior citizen romance with Peter O'Toole and Sophia Loren. I mean, it was a very ambitious movie, and I still think it could be made. It resembled Snowpiercer in it was a near-apocalyptic story, but it wasn't post-apocalyptic. It was in the future, and the ozone layer was so destroyed that there was no longer any jet travel. So there were bullet trains that took you around the world. And this was the inaugural trip of the first bullet train that went from North America to Europe, to Great Britain, over the North Pole through Iceland. So, unbeknownst to some of the, to the passengers, there was a company that had been doing kind of genetic experiments that was developing something that was going to make a lot of money for them, developing an organism that would generate oxygen that they would, in the future, people are buying air, buying water. It's like we're getting to right now, like water is becoming a commodity. So the future, like all these things are in short supply. So the villains had this shortcut of genetic engineering that enabled them to manufacture air and rip people off by selling air at ridiculous prices. But the genetic experiment gets haywire and it mutates, and it's on the train and it's killing people. So it was a survival story. It was very upscale and glamorous. It was going to be like Titanic. We had the same dynamic of a young girl who's being forced to marry a rich asshole. A lot of that stuff. And this book, the greatest science fiction movies never made. It's definitely worth reading, and you'll get a gist of what the movie would have been. And I hope that someday it gets made. Now, Dean Devlin, who was had done an early draft of the movie before I did the production rewrite for Roland Emmerich, he later on acquired the rights to make the movie, and he says that he's going to make it someday. But so I have fingers crossed.
Yeah. That sounds like another prophetic script from you in water becoming a commodity, not unlike all the crazy predictions you made with Running Man. I think you even predicted the internet. You predicted the internet.
Yeah, I know. I know. When Trump was elected, there were a bunch of articles all over the world about how the movie predicted Trump in the persona of a game show host who's running the government, of fake news.
Yep.
The AI house, lights on, put on the oven, make coffee. There are so many things that we got right. And the Vice channel did a documentary, a 15-minute documentary about. So I keep saying it's not my fault. I was just typing it. It was just typing. Please don't blame me.
That fake news thing where they used the footage, they faked the footage of Jesse Ventura killing Arnie and character Amber.
That's another post-production idiocy. In the original script, I copied, it gets steal from the best. I copied the end of the sting. You did not know that the TV show was so desperate that they faked Arnold's death. Just like you did not know that Paul Newman and Robert Redford were pretending to kill each other until after they did it. So the audience was shocked when they killed each other in the sting. Then the people they're mind fucking, they're head faking, leave the room, and they get up and say, "Boy, that really worked." That's the way the picture was written and assembled. And I was at a test audience screening of the movie, and when Jesse Ventura he comes out, and the first thing he does, he kills Marie Conchita Alonso, snaps her neck. The audience is stunned. And now Arnold beats the living daylights out of Jesse Ventura, and little old ladies saying, "Kill the son of a bitch, Arnold." They can't believe he killed. And then at the last minute, Jesse Ventura throws Arnold on spikes and he dies. And the audience watching the show in the movie is as stunned as the audience in the theater. And then the TV show ends. And then Richard Dawson says, "Boy, that trick worked." And you see behind him on screen, somebody pushes a button and the face of the dead guy comes off, and it's some other poor bastard they kill. When we showed it at test screening, as often would happen of the 1980s, when we have film and it wasn't digital, it was a black and white shot of a special effect. It said effect missing. So there's like 600 people in this test screening. And I come into this, and it was off the charts, the test screening. Off the charts. Equal to Die Hard. So I come in the next day to the studio, and I see the editors are working on the last reel. Like, what's going on? He says, "We're recutting the last reel. We're swapping 2 scenes." I go, "What the hell? Who ordered this?" And it was a producer of the movie who was a producer in movie business for 5 minutes. He was a rich guy, made his money, he bought the rights to the book, and now and I go, "What the hell is this?" He says, "Look at this. Look at the cards." So there's people fill out the cards, right?
Mm.
So the cards, like, say, what did you like? What didn't you like? And there's like 15 cards that say, "I did not understand how they faked Arnold's death." And he says, the audience doesn't get it. And I go, "Look at these cards, these people. Why did you come to the movie?" Came with grandchild. These people don't get it because they're old. You got 600 people there. You had 15 people that weren't confused because it says shot missing. You're an idiot. And I said to the editor, "You're screwing the movie. You're hurting this movie." He says, "Yeah, but he writes the checks." he writes the checks. He's going to be out of the movie business in a year. I won't be. We're never working again. Anyway, I invite anyone who has a Blu-ray of the movie to swap those 2 scenes back. Because what happens is, if you see the movie, you watch that big fight like in complete boredom. It's like watching a rerun of the big soccer match last week. You know how it ends. So all the excitement got sucked out of like the last 15 minutes of the movie. And it affected, I think, the box office.
Yeah. Although, it's like all the movies we've talked about, a lot of love for The Running Man, a lot of love for that film. And Stephen, thank you for taking the time to chat to me, and thank you for showing me some California sunshine. It looks amazing there. I have spent this entire interview being slightly jealous.
I'll give a higher angle here. So you see the inviting swimming pool there, which I can't go in. I had stitches in my leg, and he said I can't go in the pool till the stitches close. So I'm just like you. I'm looking longingly at the swimming pool.
Well, okay, that makes me feel a bit better. Why do you have stitches in your leg? Did you hurt yourself?
No, I had some surgery, and it's
okay.
I'm on the mend. You wouldn't know it looking at me, except for me complaining I can't go in the pool for another week.
Oh, Stephen, a pleasure speaking to you. Enjoy the rest of your day in sunny California. Thank you for your time, mate.
All right, thank you, and let me know if you want any links or anything to some of the things I've talked about, and I'll be happy to provide them for you. I've got storyboards of some of the movies. I mean, if you think of anything you want to put on your site, just let me know, and I'll get it to you.
Amazing. Oh, well, we'll be in touch, but that's fantastic. Thanks again.
All right. Take care.
Have a great day. Cheers.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.